Take us away.
Are we starting?
Yeah,
All right.
whatever.
We can use that Catholic bit as an outtake. Yeah. Oh, should we clap? Do we have to do that thing? I just like clapping. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Three Losers in a Church podcast. Three Losers in a podcast.
It's a second brainchild.
Yeah, this is already going well. Today, we're talking about a term I made up called non-vocational ministry, which refers more to doing ministry, being the light of the world outside of a traditional ministry setting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you make that up?
Not the concept.
I don't think you made the word up either. But
The words are all there, but I don't think you're supposed to use them the way I'm using them.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
So what do you want to talk about?
Some stuff.
Wow.
No, well, I don't know. What's been on my mind a lot is thinking, since we're all so heavily involved in ministry to some extent, like what the thought process is when you're just doing life outside of like that ministry role. Like what, like how do you think of people? How's your thought process? You know.
I see.
Like I work in a restaurant, obviously, so I think a lot about there. Like what's going through my head? Am I still thinking from God's point of view, or am I just, different?
I see. So like
Right.
kind of like the black, like you have like your church or Sunday or like personality, and then you have like
Yeah.
your work personality.
It's like what every pastor preaches.
I think the term that I've heard the most thrown around is like, "Oh, are you a weekend Christian?"
Right.
Is the term that you hear all the time.
Yeah.
But
But like I always thought I wasn't, and maybe to some extent I'm not. But then I was thinking, like, how am I really projecting myself outside of
Yeah, no, definitely.
youth ministry and church choir?
so if you don't mind me asking, because you start off with work. I'm fun employed, so
Right. Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
that's
know.
true.
I don't know what that means. But like in this case, like for you, right? I mean, I feel like we're about to get raw and very personal. Also, I realized this entire time, it's hard to look at you when I talk. But like,
oh,
hello there.
hey there.
Shoot, what was it, guys? Like, so what is it? So like, wow, I really got derailed right there.
Oh my God.
Oh man.
Ugh.
Fun
Restaurant.
employment.
Fun employment.
Yeah. Someone please hire me. Yeah, so like in the midst of work, like do you think you are upholding your Christian character?
I think a lot of the times I'm not.
Mm.
I've been thinking a lot about that lately, Like I had a girl who's 18, so like the age of like the group of students I'm working with. And she was like, "You need Jesus." And I was like, "You need Jesus," obviously, because that's how you respond to that. But she said something along the lines of like, "What is Jesus like really doing in your life? Like basically look at how you're acting, And I was like, that's kind of funny, but also, the things that you catch me saying here a lot, like you really do see like this other side of me that is there, but like I would feel a lot less willing to show like, the worship team, for example. Like,
Wait, does this girl know that you're Christian?
yeah, everyone there pretty much does.
Gotcha.
And I get jokes about it and everything. But
I see.
yeah, and I think it's like part of it is like she doesn't know the other side of me. She doesn't know the impact that like Christ has made on me, but also am I showing that impact even a little bit? When I'm swearing in a blender or like singing stupid songs in the service aisle, or even just complaining about customers. I don't know.
Is your blender that bad that you have to swear at it?
Well, it's more that I'm bad at using the blender.
It's a blender, dude.
You're a blender.
Does that mean I mix a lot?
Sir mix a lot.
Not on the Good Christian podcast.
I think it's easy to like, especially in food service. So, I mean, I've worked in food service for a while. You've worked in food service for a while. You've probably done it longer than I have, but I don't know. There's something about it, right? It's very it's high stress.
Yeah,
everybody's angry. You're angry all the time. It's miserable a lot of the time. So, like, I don't want to say like it's more difficult in that setting because I think that's like an unfair claim to stake, but
yeah.
It's definitely difficult in a food service establishment.
Yeah.
Coming from people who have a lot of anger issues and like difficulty dealing with people, in such a service industry, which I've never understood. But
Yeah.
It's because you're dealing with people who are hangry.
yeah, that's also true. I mean,
Right.
yeah, customers are miserable, but I was even thinking just coworkers. They're also miserable.
Yeah. What I hate is when I realize like I'm the coworker.
Mhm,
That's like the
mhm.
angry one.
Mhm.
I'm like, man, what am I doing? You know, I'm supposed to have this joy. That's one of the spiritual fruits, right? Or fruits of the spirit.
Yeah.
Joy, spiritual fruits. Yeah, look at me and my scriptural knowledge.
Spiritual fruits.
Like pomegranate. I don't know why I said
Papayas.
pomegranate. I hate papayas.
I'm not into papayas.
Yeah,
Maybe I had a
okay.
bad papaya. I don't know.
Never.
That's so funny. I've never had a papaya,
No,
but like there's
don't,
there's a worship song
What?
that my summer camp does, and they sing. I think it's called the papaya song. I think it goes like the lines are like, "I like papayas. I know that mangoes are sweet. I like." Wait, no. Oh shoot. How does it go? I like bananas. I know that mangoes are sweet. I love papayas, but nothing that beats the sweet love of God. This was a song I sang at my summer camp.
It's really a weird
Yeah.
segue. I feel like
So when we have it online, you know how like during worship like you have like a background and everything? We just put a papaya for the background. This is like a
That's great.
song that we sing to like we'll go to like the elderly homes and we just sing it to them and they're just like, "What is going on?"
please leave.
Those are the spiritual
Yeah.
fruits right there. Mangoes and papayas.
I don't know. Have you guys ever had bitter melon? Like the Chinese bitter melons?
I don't think so.
So it's like this. You've probably seen it. It looks like a cucumber, but there's like hella like bumps on it. So it just looks really weird. You probably only see this
I've
in a
probably seen
Chinese
it,
supermarket. But we also sing a Cantonese song that's like talking about how like comparing the love of God to like something sweet, but saying that like our bitterness is like fukwa, which is bitter melon. It is weird. We also sing that to Chinese elderly people, and they're probably just like, "What is going on?" But anywho, tangent. Yes, fruits of the spirit, pomegranate.
I started that by making a comment.
Food service.
Food service.
Yeah.
Fruits are in
Fruit service. Yeah. I don't. I don't think it's specific to food service, but yeah, it's
No.
familiar to us.
Its environment, is it not?
No, definitely.
Yeah.
Like you could probably be dealing with like the same level of annoyance with like a middle schooler, or high schooler, or a college student that you like. Let's like the wow, how do you English? But like then you also work with someone who's like in the food service, like the same amount of annoyance, but you react in such a different way because of the context, because of where you are, right?
Mm.
Like you probably blow up at a kid if you weren't at the youth group. You probably blow up at the kid if you weren't at a retreat or in the church building, right?
Right. Like you're a lot more lax.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes to intentionality, right?
Mm.
So you're being intentional when you're in those spaces to, I don't want to say put on a facade because that seems really negative, but
Mm.
to like focus that on being more positive, right?
Right.
So in any like serving capacity, right? It's you walk into an environment and you want to put on this level of like positive and you don't want to be miserable while serving, especially serving other people.
Right.
And like some of that, like you'd be like, "Oh, that's fake," but like, is that really fake? Like when you walk in and you're serving at Hub, are you like angry at the students?
Right. No.
Sometimes.
yeah, on
Well, yeah.
occasion.
You're frustrated in a lot of things, but you're not like it's not. It's a different angry, right? And it shouldn't be
Mm.
because I think it's like inherently easier to see how God is working in those spaces.
Mm.
But I think anger is probably the point you're getting at, right? Like whenever I'd go to work, I'd be frustrated or
It usually anger is the emotion I fight the most with.
right.
I
Oh, no,
think,
definitely.
Yeah.
Like how many times like I made a million pizzas at UMass and like you take the dough docker and you just like smack the pizza dough in it because you're just so pissed. And
So
you're like,
that's
what is this
why my pizza
accomplishing?
tasted
Yeah.
so sad and bitter every single time.
That's the secret
Oh my
ingredient.
gosh.
Anger, bitterness.
Rolled into the pizza dough. But like, I don't know. And like, that's healthy, right? I don't think you shouldn't express anger.
Right.
Like, there's always better ways to express anger. But like, I'm not saying you should, flip out at coworkers.
Right,
but,
yeah.
like
Or
finding
customers.
or customers, finding a healthy way to use that anger
Mm.
for something positive.
Yeah.
And I think that's easier to do in like a serving setting versus like a work setting, right?
Right.
But then it comes into the question, right? Like the phrase you said it yourself, right? Non-vocational like ministry. Are we not called to like still love and care for all these people, right? Are we still not called to love and care for our horrible coworkers or our horrible selves or the horrible customers we work with. I think it just that itself is the challenge, right? Where like you're like saying, okay, like I know I'm supposed to be this way, but this is where I struggle, right? I know for me personally, like I mean, I never worked in food industry, but I worked in I worked in like different industries where it was just like, like very menial where like in fact I don't have interactions at all. Like I think back to my video technician job. It was literally just me and the screens. And then how do I express God's love in that way? So for me, my frustration doesn't come from the lack of from like the interaction of people, but it's the lack of interaction with people, right?
Oh, okay.
So there's that. And also selling shoes is also weird cuz everyone just wants something and you're just like, "Oh, I can just get that for you."
Right.
And it's mostly old white ladies and I don't really want to get angry at them.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
No, yeah.
True.
Yeah, and it's like it feels like the only way you can serve is to just do your job well, without any like backsass, I guess.
That's true.
And like the word used is like only, right? Which I don't think is true, but like even that
Right.
is such like as difficult as that is, like that is such an act of worship in so many ways.
True, yeah.
It's like seeing the beauty in work and in the effort you have to put in to do that, and the blessing out of having a job and having this ability to provide for yourself or others.
Yeah.
That's actually such a good point. Like the blessing of a job, right?
Right.
Hello, Mr. Fun Employed over here. Oh, I'm a professional. But honestly, like it comes to that as well. It's like, I've been having this conversation a lot with people because I do want to help with the church more. I do want to do those things, but professionally, I also should pursue like developing myself, right? I should develop my skill sets. I should learn how to work in different settings. And I think even that in itself, right? Having a job in itself is a form of worship when you use the money, use your experiences, use your skill sets for the kingdom, right? You don't necessarily have to be in a ministry serving. In fact, your service or your ministry could be working alongside with your people, right? Like if someone is pissed at you, like do you retaliate? Do you fight back, right? Or do you try to listen and hear out their side and try to address it in like a selfless manner? It's hard. It's probably one of the worst things ever.
Especially when you're like, it would be justified, like you're in the right.
Yeah.
Earthly justification is too real for
I know,
anything.
for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I have certain customers where I'm like, man, you are a cretin, and that's like a totally wrong mindset. And I have to like keep catching myself, be like, that person is a child of God.
Yeah.
Whether they know God or not,
And that's mind blowing to me, right? It's like, oh shoot, like as much as I want to hate or like kick or like destroy this person, like God still created them, right?
Yeah.
They are a human being with their own life. They are a human being that is breathing right in front of me. As much as we like like how people like joke about like, oh, I want to kill this person and everything, like that if you really like took it to the next level for that phrase, it's horrifying. Like that person doesn't deserve to die despite like what they like just because they didn't tip you or they just said, oh, this food sucks. Like
right.
That's just not right.
I just like taking that like whole like bad customer thing to another level. Like how many times do we interact with bad customers at church, right?
Right.
Like, there's those same people. They go places.
Yeah.
Right? Even sometimes literally the same people, but like they're still in our lives, right? They're still bad customers in our life. Right?
Yeah.
Of course, that's a weird analogy, but
But at the end of the day, like, are we all not sinners, right?
Right,
I feel like we talked about this in a previous podcast, but like, just because you're a sinner in like a restaurant, you're still also a sinner at church. You're still very much the same broken individual,
Right.
right? But yeah.
it all comes back to intent.
It does.
Over
Yeah.
and over again.
Yeah. I feel like I'm trying to break that down, but I don't know how.
So like the conversation and the topic of intent.
Yeah, like I've been working on not swearing.
Okay.
That's been a huge problem for me.
Yeah.
So I've been like actively, intentionally at work, like not doing it. I've been like telling people to call me out on it if they catch me doing it, and like I don't know if anyone thinks it's making a difference or like if they see any point in it. But to me, it's like, well, this is just one way I can present myself better here.
If you don't mind me grilling you a bit.
Oh yeah.
Like, because you talk about intent, right?
I work in a kitchen.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on. Yes, it was a grill joke.
I hate you all. because because you're saying like, oh, like let's talk about intent, right? So like my question to you is like, let's dive further into that. Like let's use that as a subject of like of conversation.
Mhm.
But like, so the first question I have is like, why do you want to stop swearing?
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been trying to find the passage in the Bible, and I can't remember what it is. And God knows I can't remember anything to save my life. But it's something along the lines of like, I don't even want to try to say it because I'm going to get it so wrong. But like, Paul especially talks a lot about like keeping your mind off of like impure things, like focusing on things that are good and righteous and all that. And like to me, like your language, the way you speak, if you're just cursing like a sailor, I mean, it's tough because I'm not really offended by a lot of the words, like a lot of curse words and foul language. But like I know that it's like, I don't know. Like God didn't just create us to be crass all the time, and to be making jokes about genitalia all the time, and to be like constantly just.
It can be funny though.
You're right, and that's the
Yes.
problem is I'm easily amused by it. So it's like,
Too real.
yeah. So it's like, I don't know. Like I want to, like, what am I showing by showing like, oh yeah, half my vocabulary consists of me cussing, and I get angry and I start swearing instead of, I don't know. I'm not phrasing it very well. What I'm trying to say,
I mean, I think it comes to like setting yourself apart from the world,
Right.
and in what way and shape and form that looks like. A good example is not swearing. I don't know, not indulging in worldly things.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, like even like Amish people. I couldn't think of that for a second, but Amish people are like setting themselves apart. They're doing it a little differently and for different manners, but like in a sense, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you should go to that extreme because I like this and I don't want to be Amish, but like just to start that process of beginning to set yourself aside. Maybe that is swaying. Maybe it's I don't know wearing white socks. I don't know.
Right.
That's
Which I
a bad
don't own
example.
white socks
Wait,
anymore. Yeah.
what?
I don't know why I thought of white socks.
My first thought was like, you sweat through white socks, they're gonna turn yellow.
Oh,
Sorry.
weird
Don't
first
wear
thought.
white socks.
Don't wear white
Life
socks.
lesson.
Exactly.
I haven't owned white socks in 10 years.
I was 9-10 years ago, so I can't make that statement,
Oof.
but probably.
Big oof.
Ooh, that hurt. That cut deep.
But
You were my age almost 10 years ago.
Oh. Oh, my feelings.
Anyways, sorry. My
so
apologies. for-
Chris is old.
I'm young.
Yeah.
But there's also the passage about like being a candle, right, and to the world. There's a Bible passage where it talks about like you wouldn't cover like your light. You want your light to be shown, and I think that in itself, right, like not swearing. The phrase that you were using was like differentiating yourself from the others, like to show like how much of an impact or how different you are, right? But it's also the idea of like, oh, if it truly has changed you, then people can see it, right? I think back to my old man. So when I went back to Taiwan, I have an aunt, and through broken Chinese, I was like, yo, like, what was my dad like when he was younger? And the age difference is actually very similar to you and Tyler, and vice versa. My dad was 10 years older than my aunt, and she told me stories of where my dad he travel places, and they had a bicycle. She would sit in the basket of the bicycle on the rails, and then they just go. Yeah, but what's not adorable is that he would smash her into the wall when they get home.
like in an abusive way.
I don't know what my old man was doing, but apparently that's what she told me. She's like, yeah, I don't know why, but then old man Sue, that's who he was. But what happened was like when I was talking to her, and we were trying to she was our only way to get around the city, right? So she gave us rides to the church on Sunday, and we invite her when we went. And I remember talking to her, and she's like, wow, I guess like this Christianity thing does do something because your dad is a lot less angry than he used to be. Kind of hard to believe that the guy who like smashed me against the wall on a bike is now a pastor.
Yeah.
So I think that in itself can go to show you like, wow, like time and faith does change someone as well. And my dad, when I was younger, my dad was a lot angrier. Like he used to have these crazy outbursts where he would yell, like throw things. Like the most vivid memory I have is him like grabbing a chair and just like he didn't really throw, he just like shook it back and forth just out of pure anger. Very odd. I still remember it in my head, but nowadays he's just like it's so hard to piss him off.
Really?
Yeah, like he to the same degree that my mom like would like get mad at him or like they get into fights, like he's just so calm. It's very rare for him to yell. Like I saw that change over the course of my entire life, which is insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts. It's not nuts, actually. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
I mean, he's also a pastor, so it's like
right. A passive anger problem.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. Because for me, there's always that like initial fight back too, where like I say like I'm going to try to stop swearing, and everyone's like, "You? What? Or they don't make that noise because they're not Tim Allen, but except when I told Tim Allen.
You told Tim Allen that,
Yeah, I wrote him a letter,
and he responded.
He wrote a letter.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I had like a reputation in college just because of my commentary and sense of humor and way I was doing things. And like I think when people realized I wasn't doing that anymore, they're like, "What's wrong with you?" Like, especially a guy I used to live with, certain guy that you met. When I would start changing the way I was doing things, he's just like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you acting this way now?" It's like, well, I don't know. It's how I should be present. It's what I should be doing, Not presenting myself because that makes it sound like it's about my image, but it's how I should be representing what God's been doing for me.
Because he truly changed you.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think that image thing is negatively bad.
Right.
Maybe I like being argumentative, but like you want to have a good image, right? I mean, you don't want to be deterring,
right,
to the gospel in any way. And that's not saying you should be a saint, right? It doesn't hurt to strive to be one.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's kind of the goal.
Yeah, literally. Maybe not saint. Don't die a martyr, but yeah, it's easy to be like, oh, but like I don't want to be concerned about how people perceive about me. I just more about like my internal thing. But you should change internally, and I think like that process is good and it will happen. But this like having a good external image, how people perceive of you is not negative.
Right.
There's a Bible passage that talks about the idea of causing a brother to stumble, right? I talk about a lot about this because I've actually witnessed it where it backfired, right? External image, people see you, right? And especially when like you are interacting with people who are of younger faith or newer faith, right? I think like a youth leader is a very good example of this, right? If a younger kid like sees you like swearing or like kicking a dog, then they're gonna be like, oh wow, that's a representation of Christianity, right? They look up to you, they see that, right?
Right.
And then when you do such things, you unintentionally you're telling them, that's okay to do too, right?
This is what Christ has to offer you.
Yeah, kicking dogs, kicking dogs and swearing. But even into like your first, like as you grow older, right? Like you're going to interact with people from all walks of faith, and it is important to show like like how does God change you, right? There's like the passages like talking about like how like you don't like not partaking of like the idols foods, right? So like it's okay, like inherently like sure that food was offered to like an idol, but just because you eat it doesn't mean like you're horrible, right? And like you as a mature Christian may fundamentally understand that, but if a younger Christian sees that, how are they going to interpret it, right? Which is why like as you do things, your goal is not to cause others to stumble. Your goal is to also make sure that they are walking like straight and true, right? So I think that it also like lends itself hand in hand, right? How do your actions like represent God? How do your actions get seen? I had a friend who was very into vaping, right? And he, vape natio. 1, 2.
I always get it backwards. I don't know.
Wait, V. There we go.
VN. I don't know.
How does that turn into a P?
Figured it out.
Oh, that's a. Never mind. Okay. But he started vaping because an older Christian brother of his was vaping, and he was inherently explaining vaping's not bad when like you understand like why you're doing it and like how you're doing it and like how it doesn't affect you, right? But then this younger guy, it actually ended up being a gateway for him to go back to doing like drugs and stuff like that. So like again, that's an extreme, but like it goes to show you like what you may understand as a Christian, another brother may not necessarily understand.
Yeah. And then if they don't, somebody who's not a Christian at all.
Right.
Somebody who's not even thinking about God, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that doesn't seem appealing at all.
Yeah, I mean, even like world perception of Christians, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's easy to point to bad examples of Christians showing how Christian they are in the world.
Yeah.
And like, understandably, right? We're like Christians are under a microscope a lot of how they do things and how hypocritical they are, and a lot of times Christians can be pretty hypocritical.
Mm.
Not rightfully so, but
Right.
it happens.
Yeah.
So like seeing that and like imagining the outside world looking and going like, oh, I want nothing to do with this organization.
Right.
Like, what do they have to offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, because you claim your entire life is based on this savior who can change you completely, make you into a new creation, and you're still acting this way because there's still the broken side of us, like the sinning side of us, you know. So
Yeah.
And like, I don't think. Well, there's two sides of this. I was going to say something and then I realized that I don't really 100% agree with it. But if you solely based your transformation on outside perspective, right, it seems hollow, right? And that's not a good thing. But if that is a gateway to actual transformation, then it's positive.
right.
So, like, if it solely ends at I am only doing this so I can put on a facade,
Facade.
Forsooth.
so
Vermouth.
vermouth. Oh my god! But if you were doing this like just solely for that, of course, it's hollow and hypocritical and false in a lot of ways. But if that begins the process of legitimate transformation, which I think is true in a lot of cases,
Yeah.
then it's worth it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But I think like gauging that is tricky.
Because you can never know the intent, right?
Yeah.
Of other people, but
Right.
also yourself. Like it is a cloudy gray area. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I do a lot of things in life that I go like, oh, that was really for that person, but like, oh, also kind of me, you know?
Yeah.
Like it made me feel nice or made me look like a better person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get that.
So I mean, there's
I've
always
been
going to be a little both, right? Like
Yeah.
usually good things make you look like a better person.
there. Right.
Is that a bad thing? No.
And it's also over time, right? Like, I had a counselor who said he literally started going to church because he thought the girls there were cute.
Right. Which,
I think that's a common thing.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah.
Some people switch churches because they're like, oh, I want to find a potential wife because there's no one out in this church, right? I know plenty of people who do that, and
Right.
I'm like, okay, like I mean, do I agree with that? Not necessarily. I think that's kind of sus, but like at the end of the day, like if you're still going to church, if you're still doing that, like
Yeah. If there's still that.
connection,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeet.
John's back.
Is that what that noise is?
Sure.
Oh.
Hope it doesn't get picked up on the. It won't get picked up on the mics, right?
I can listen and see.
Yeah. Well, I think our time is a factor for this episode, right? I don't know how much we're sticking to that original plan.
We don't tend to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fine if we go over.
Traditional ministry make it easier. I think like our next mindset would probably be
Are you even being picked up by your mic?
me
Yeah.
Right
If you're over
now.
there.
right now. Yeah,
Oh, you are.
I don't really hear the shower though.
No, that's good.
I just mean because you're like a foot away from the microphone.
Oh yeah, that's good. I mean, I can hear myself in here.
Oh, cool.
Huh.
Great.
Neat.
You're faint.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I don't really hear it.
Oh, that's such a good question, though.
What did I write? I don't remember.
The traditional ministry make it easier to think of everything else not as a ministry.
I think that's a good tangent.
I mean,
Yeah.
those two tie in together. The last two questions, right? Like, are you in a different mindset doing your ministry as opposed to outside of that ministry?
Yeah, and we touched on that in the beginning, but
Yeah.
that'd be a good idea. And then I think we can end on that 2 Corinthians.
Sure.
Yeah. Maybe just cut this last 2 minutes out completely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We'll just do like a technical, difficult. I don't know.
No, you can just straight cut. We talked about it.
We did talk
Yeah.
about this. Okay.
Or just put the mulch dance in there.
I gotta make that into like. Never mind. I'll have
The
fun.
B-roll will be real.
B-roll. Yeah. But it's tunnel visioning, right? That essentially what that question is. Does being involved in a traditional ministry make it easier to think of everything else not as a ministry? Like,
For me, yes.
Okay. Do you want to repeat that question and then go into it? So
Yeah.
we have a clean cut.
True. Maybe you should repeat it because I can't
Oh,
read
yeah.
it with the camera there.
Does being involved in a traditional ministry make it easier to think of everything else as not a ministry?
Yeah. For me.
I mean, yes and no, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I said right at the end of that. For
Right.
me, it's yes and no.
Objectively, I'm right.
But like it's easier to be like, okay, like being involved in a lot of ministry makes your life kind of a ministry in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Like I think the more you serve and the more you go and the more time you spend in a church with church people, right, you will grow to be a better Christian.
Yeah, that is
mean,
true.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it makes it easier in a sense of like seeing that you should be doing that because like that's what you're called to do, but also like it puts like a real level of like how difficult it is to actually do it.
Yeah.
Like once you've seen it in practice of like what it actually looks like, then it almost becomes more difficult to do it because you know what it entails.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Like the comparison. So like you know what it looks like, so that's what you should be doing.
Right.
Yeah, we fall short of that.
So you have a good example, but like how much effort it takes to get and complete that example.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I leave the youth group, and I go to the convenience store afterwards to get some flaming hot Cheetos, and I'm like, it's immediately a different mindset for me, at least, where it's like you're not like my little people anymore. Like I'm not discipling or ministering to the cashier about Cheetos.
Though that'd be very interesting.
Not really ministering to anyone about Cheetos,
Yeah.
I guess. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's like I don't think of that as a ministry anymore, even though it is by nature, just by existing. I don't know.
Yeah. But I think it's also important, I mean, to talk about the aspects of not ministry and normal ministry, right? I think looking at both of you guys too, right? Like my old man, I talk about my old man a lot, but his advice was always like, like if you really too want to go into seminary or like ministry, like full time, you should learn what it's like to live on the other side. I think and it's true, right? Like if your sermons are relatable, if you yourself understand the experiences that the people that you're shepherding have gone through, I think that's why youth ministry, so many people can be in youth ministry because they've gone through their youth, right? Can you like share about that? Can you talk about that? The question is, can you relate, right? And that in itself is so important because it really like deepens your relationship with other people.
That is true. So really taking in those experiences.
Yeah. Because I mean, like let's talk about like rewinding a lot back to the beginning, right? Like angry customers, angry at all those people, annoying coworkers, right? Like you can that is the universal like suffering that we all go through, right? I could talk about annoying coworkers or like people I've like experienced, right? And if you can flip that and like turn that into a story of like how God is so prevalent or like how much we need God, people relate on that level, right?
That's true. That's a book idea I've had for years. It's like I have a list of customers from the convenience store I was at, and like how I saw God in those weird interactions, and like, I won't get into the details, but just like the way, I don't know, to me, like how I saw God at work, or like how I saw people needing God or looking for God in the way they were doing things, whether they knew it or not,
Yeah.
So I think kind of in what Sam's saying is even if you're not like intentionally thinking like, oh, this experience, this time in my life is quote ministry. So maybe that time in the convenience store, you're not like, oh, I'm sharing the gospel or I'm like pouring out something, but you are still learning something that can be used in ministry, right?
Yeah.
And can be used and like in a way that is kind of a part of ministry, right?
Right.
Like living life is ministry.
You're learning, you're growing.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a weird word, and I'm not a big fan of it. But
Ministry or growing?
ministry.
We've said that at least like 3,000
I
times
know.
already
Well,
in this podcast.
It's one of the 3 words in the title. So
That's fair. Actually, it's kind of 2 because non-vocational is hyphenated.
thanks, Chris. I was reading the question. Sorry.
That's okay. I can't read the question. There's too many visual obstructions.
Visual obstruction. I mean, if this is episode 3, can we ask our viewers or listeners to comment or share like, I don't know, like an experience that they have where they seen God? Because I think that's that's such a cool way to like also see like, oh, like how God works in so many different ways, right? Like it's not every. I think in everything you can see God in somehow, right?
Especially if you're looking.
Yeah. So comment.
Yeah. On our
Hit that like button.
Yeah.
Hit that.
Smash
Smash that like button if you're into that.
Never understood that.
Yeah, it became a meme and then it just blew up from there. Yeah.
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 Chris, you want to wrap us up with this 2 Corinthians passage
If I can see it.
that you can't really read? Sam, you want to read it?
Yeah, maybe you should read it.
So the verse that we decided to just close this podcast off with, maybe you learned something from our podcast, maybe you didn't. It's just us processing and talking. But the verse that we decided to close off with is from 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 16. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer.
That's like a really good thing to strive for, too. Like, to make that real in life.
Mm.
Yeah, viewing everyone from God's point of view.
Yeah.
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 Let's see how many times we can say yeah.
That's a podcast in itself.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
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 Wow.
Shall we close?
Yeah, which one of you good wants to close?
I mean, you started the podcast.
Close
That's
us
true.
out.
I also
We should
forget how
write a
many-
script for closing at some point.
Yes.
We really should.
But-
yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, to 3 Losers in a Church. I got it right this time.
Hey.
Be sure to like and subscribe, which I assume is a thing on the whatever we're putting this on.
Thanks, Chris.
And yeah, we out.
See you next time.
We are out.
Yeah, I'm not Catholic, but if purgatory were a thing, I think I-95 during rush hour
Is
Would you be in a, is roughly what purgatory.
Would you be in a car, or do you think you
walking on
walking?
I-95.
So like it's just a crowd of people just going nowhere.
Oh, yeesh. During rush hour.
Dude, that'd be miserable.
But you're not sitting in cars, you're just
No.
sitting in space.